All right. Hello. Come on in the room. I'm excited about this evening's special event and looking forward to chatting with our special guests. So if you are here with us live, come on in so we can talk to you. And as you're coming on in the room, please let us know where you're joining us from, just so we can kind of know who's represented in the room with us live. So for those of you who don't know me, I am Marcy Thomas. I am the founder of Brown Girl Collective, which has been around for about 12 years, celebrating bold, brilliant, and beautiful Black women and girls. And about a year or so ago, I started the BGC Book Club because I'm a book lover. As you can see, if you look behind me, this is one shelf. There's actually another that matches it on the other side. But I love to read, and I figured this is a great way for me to share my love of reading, especially Black women authors, with all of you who also enjoy reading. So thank you for joining us at this time. If you're live, please let us know that you're here. Share it on out with your friends if you like, your book-loving friends, because this is a great conversation that I know you're going to want to be a part of. So I see we got a good group of folks in the room, so I'm excited for that. And I don't believe in holding people's time. So without any further delay, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our guest author for the evening. Mbinguni is a natural storyteller. She was born and raised on the Berry Island of, I'm going to say it wrong, Fernandina Beach. Forgive me if I said that wrong, Florida. And she's had dreams of writing professionally for as long as she can remember. She's an avid reader like I am, and she began composing her own stories as early as she could remember. She channeled her technical know-how of instructional design into her creative passion and wrote her recent debut novel, Looking for Hope as a Labor of Love. When she's not writing novels, she also does write under her, I can't talk today for some reason. She writes under her name that she was given at birth, which is Celestial Holmes. And she writes for Black with No Chaser. And she did a good series on Lovecraft Country, which many of us have enjoyed. And also she writes for Black Girl Nerds. So I want to go ahead and share a trailer that she has for Looking for Hope for those of you who are not familiar with the book, so you can get a little taste of what it's about. And we'll go ahead and bring her on. So bear with me just a second. Get this going for you. And here we go. All right, and we are here. Welcome, Mbinguni. Thank you so much for being here.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Yes, and once again, in case you didn't catch the video, This is the book that we can't wait to discuss this evening. So welcome and thank you for taking so much time out of your schedule. I know it's been kind of a crazy time for all of us lately, so I'm glad that you were able to join us. We actually met each other a couple of months ago at the Black Writers Week, and like we were saying earlier, it seems like it's been more than a couple of months just because so much is happening
Yes.
in the world around us. So thanks again for coming on and being with us this evening.
Absolutely. I'm glad to be here.
So before we get into the story, tell us a little bit about what was it that inspired you to write your first book, because this is your debut novel, as mentioned. And what was it that inspired you to write Looking for Hope?
Well, I have always been a writer for as long as I can remember. I still have things around the house that I wrote when I was in 6th grade.
Wow.
So I've always wanted to write, and Mouse just would not leave me alone. Her story came to me when I saw her dressed in clothes from the late 50s and 60s. So I knew what era she was supposed to be in. And she just kind of kept nagging at me until I started to write her story. And it took me a long time to finally get the guts up to really buckle down and get the story written. But that's really kind of what finally gave me the final push, was the character just would not leave me alone.
And quite a character she is. So I can't wait for us to talk a little bit more about her and her story as we, move through this evening. So please, for those who may not have had a chance to read the book yet, if you don't mind, just share a little excerpt just so we can get a taste of what the book is about.
Sure. Okay, so I'll give a little bit of a setup in terms of this book is a little bit of an adventure. Mouse is on the road with her father, and they stop at these different places that these colorful characters are at. And so one of the stops is Miss Sookie's, and she is a woman who has a house of ill repute, I guess you would call it, or ladies of the night, whatever you want to call it. And so the excerpt I'm reading will come from that section.
All right.
It was time for me to go tend to Miss Sookie, so I left the kitchen and made my way to her room. Wherever Lizzie's room was in the house, she must have mastered the art of keeping to herself. I swept and dusted while Miss Sookie tended to checking the first wave of guests in for the night. She would have 30 minutes before round 2, during which she would come to her room to freshen up. I was brushing Mercy when she came in. "Hey, darling," Miss Sookie sang. "Hey, Miss Sookie." Miss Sookie floated past me and headed to her shelf of wigs. "How you doing today?" "I'm good. Miss Sookie, can I ask you a question?" She paused to give me her full attention. "Sure, baby. What you want to know?" "How did Lizzie come to work here?" I questioned in my best nonchalant tone. "Lizzie? Who is Lizzie?" Miss Sookie looked up in the air with her hands on her hips. I was puzzled. How did Miss Sookie not know her girls' names? "Mrs. Jameson kept calling her Sugar," I hinted. "Oh, Sugar." Miss Sookie gives all her gals names when they come here. I don't want to know who they were before they came, and it's best they forget, if they ever knew in the first place. Miss Sookie usually referred to herself in third person, which I always found a little funny. "Why you ask?" "Someone at school asked me if I knew her," I answered. "I never saw her until today." "Mouse, people in this town don't sweep around their own front door." Miss Sookie turned around to look for something in the back of her closet. When she turned back around, I must have been looking confused. "Everybody have their own crosses to bear. You should worry about your own. Don't think I don't know there's some odd reason you and your daddy showed up on my doorstep. I got too many girls here to worry about it, and I needed the help. You want to know what happened to Sugar? You be big enough to ask her." I took her words as an admonishment. I hadn't meant to be out of place. I just wanted to understand how she ended up here. Miss Sookie softened at the tears welling up in my eyes. She grabbed me by the chin and looked at me. It almost felt like she was looking through me. "You listen here, Mouse. I know those mean kids at that school probably pick on you because your daddy work here. Don't you pay them no mind. That don't have nothing to do with you. They hear what their mamas and some of their daddies say about this place, and they think they hate it without even really knowing what it's all about. You ignore them and get your book learning, you hear? Miss Sookie's voice was more tense than I had ever heard it. I looked her in the eyes and said, yes, ma'am. It ain't but two ways out for a little black girl, your brains or your backside. If you don't get your books, you'll end up working for me or someone like me. You too bright for that. A lot of these girls are, but they never had no one tell them. No one ever told me. I like you, so I'm telling you. Mouse, you make the right choice early, or the choice will make you. Miss Sookie said with a shake of a finger. If regret had a face, Miss Sookie was wearing it. I'll stop there.
All right, that was great. That was great, and a good introduction to one of the characters in the story. Yes, I love that. Just the fact that she's saying, books are backside, and there is some truth to that. There is some truth to that,
right?
Yeah. So one of the things, this story, wow, it's so much. Like we were talking about at the beginning before we came on, is that it is a coming of age story, and it starts out with a pretty tragic event. I mean, one starts out happy, and then within that first chapter, something tragic happens.
Right.
And you were saying that, of course, there were people who may have been a little gun shy. By seeing that, literally and figuratively, a little gun shy when seeing that, but that if they stick with the story, it's such a powerful story of this young woman. And I can understand why you said that Mouse kind of came to you and stuck with you as you were writing the character. Early on, I never like to give a lot of spoilers, but there are some things that you can pick up on just by the context of the story. Early on, Mouse has this great relationship with her father, and then also with her mom. And then there are some things that happen that Dad starts to change. And in writing the story, what was it about that character whose name happens to be Ray? What was it about the character of Ray that you made him go through this deep change or depression, so to speak?
It was really the catalyst for the story. It was needed in order for the story to even take place. Because he was a totally different man at the beginning of the book, and for this event to happen, a few events happened that changed him. And I think we had to see that transition and see that he was a very loving, caring, attentive father prior to all of that, to kind of understand, number one, how Mouse then begins to relate to him, and then also understand how the tragedy could have happened in the first place. So it was really just a vehicle, but I wanted for him to still have some humanity, and for it not to be, although people, many people off rip, people say, I hate Ray and blah, blah, blah. But I still wanted him to have some humanity and to not be a total waste, I guess, as a character.
Right, absolutely. Because the reality of it is that a lot of times when things do happen, it's not that person has always been this way or felt this way or behaved in this way. There are things that trigger people to make, decisions in the heat of the moment that they may not have made under normal circumstances.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, and I was just going to say, and this was also during a time, now, thankfully, our community is beginning to open up to talk about mental health and to not stigmatize getting help. But this was before all of that. This is set in the late 1950s and 1960s. So that was before we knew about getting help and really being able to quickly identify and diagnose mental health issues and that sort of thing. So considering the time, he didn't have a lot of tools to help him deal with what he was going through.
No, absolutely not. And so, turn to, drinking or whatever, because that would have been the thing back then, that people would have turned to. So, yes. So, of course, after this event happens, it changes the trajectory of Mouse's life. It changes the trajectory of Ray's life. And the story starts out based in Maplewood, Georgia. Mm-hmm. And so based upon the things that happen, they have to leave. They decide to leave. Well, he decides to leave and take Mouse with him. And so they, start traveling. If you look at the cover of the book, it's a bus. So I'm not giving anything away with that. They go and jump on a bus and go as far as the bus will take them with the money that they have at that time. And they land in Virginia, Franklintown, Virginia. Where they go and, to stay at a boarding house for a while. So let me ask you a question about that, because of course we know why they were traveling, because they were trying to get away from home. What was it about the locations that you chose? Because it seems like the things with the locations were very strategic.
Honestly, I gave them names that, they were made up, most of the names. Franklintown is actually a historic place here near where I am, that is around the American Beach area, that is pretty popular for being one of the biggest Black beaches. Mm-hmm. And that's the town that I grew up in, Fernandina Beach, Florida. So there are little nods throughout the book. So it was really about them traveling kind of, I wanted them to go north, away from the south. But in terms of like the names of the cities, they were more so nods. Like there's an Eatonville. No, I don't, Eaton, what do I call it? Eaton. It's not Eatonville, like the real city, but it's
Eatonville.
Eatonville. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So they were kind of little nods to real places. But
okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Because Eatonville is where Zora Neale Hurston.
Yes.
Okay, so I know a little something.
I spent quite a bit of time in Central Florida, many years.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. But yes, they travel off to Virginia, and one of the things that I mentioned to you earlier about Mouse's character, of course, based upon the things that have happened, she's a little traumatized based upon the things that she has experienced. And she reminded her character at that point, reminded me of Maya Angelou, and how Maya Angelou went through some things in her life, and it's like she stopped speaking. Mm-hmm. So with Mouse, was it a part of her just the trauma, or was it her trying to find her voice later, or a combination of the two?
I think it was primarily the trauma. Children are extremely resilient, but for something as tragic as what happens in the book, there had to be some outward result or response to what had happened. So it was really the trauma that triggered that, as well as another habit that she begins to have in the book. Those were her coping mechanisms. I think kind of after the event, she kind of shuts down. She doesn't even know how to process what has happened. So, and I really thought that first stop, the characters that came to me for that first stop were really instrumental in kind of helping to bring her back to herself. They will remain special characters to me for that reason. Miss Janie was very special to me. So.
Oh yes, Miss Janie, she definitely she took Mouse under her wing and just really nurtured her. And even when she wasn't speaking, she kept communicating with her and was able to encourage her to find her voice. Along with Mr. Earl, the two of them together and their relationship and their friendship. It was just great to see that, because, Ray, even though, of course, he took his daughter with him, he was distant, for a lot of reasons. And she wasn't necessarily feeling him either.
Right.
But it was an opportunity for some other adults to kind of see, something's not right. But it's good that they didn't just throw her away. Even though she was a child and around a lot of adults and in adult situations, the adults that were around her always embraced her. And I thought that was powerful.
Mm-hmm. It was a revelation that I had after writing the book and actually kind of talking about it a few times. I kind of recognized how these women, I recognized it, but I think it hit me that, oh man, like you've kind of had these strong women around you your whole life who have poured into you and loved on you. And thankfully I had not experienced anything like what Mouse experienced, but that still came through in the book, that these women kind of rally around her without even really understanding why they're doing it. They just know she needs it. And I think that's one of the great things about women in particular, but Black women especially. We tend to kind of just mother, even if we're not, like I have no biological children, but that is I kind of take that on when children are around. So that's one of the things that I find very special about the book, is those women who kind of, rallied around her.
Mm-hmm. And I would agree. I don't have any children either. So, so yes, I definitely can understand that. I had a friend say to me once that, not having children is nothing to, not ashamed, because there's no shame around it, but she's like, God had a different purpose for you. And sometimes when a person is so engaged in their own situation, they don't necessarily have the time or the energy to reach out to others. She's like, but with you not having children, you have that energy, you have that spirit to reach out and to mother and, do those sorts of things, nurture others. So yeah, there is truth to that. And actually with Miss Janie, she didn't have any children either. So yeah, that was definitely, very powerful to see that and how they embraced her. So of course, moving forward a little bit, they're in this town, I think for about a couple of years. Mm-hmm. They were in this town for about a couple of years. And then Ray figures out the Mouse is starting to talk.
Well, time to go.
He was not too happy about that. And then, of course, she was discouraged because she's like, oh, man, I kind of knew that this would happen. So then of course that it does, and they decide, hey, it's time for us to go, and they move on to the next place, which is, I'm trying to keep my city straight, that is Edenville. Right. They go on to Edenville, Michigan, and that is where the excerpt that you read for us took place at Miss Sookie's house. Yep. So now one thing I wasn't clear, how did he find Miss Sookie's house? Because with the first, somebody told him to go there, but
he didn't know. I'm sorry. Excuse me. He didn't know what this house was. It kind of just was like, this place looks like somewhere where, people come through. Let me see what type of establishment this is. And he just kind of wanders up to the door and knocks on it. Despite the people that are standing around that kind of look like, this might not be the place you want to come, especially with a child.
Right, right.
But he knocks on the door anyway. And thankfully, Miss Sookie's is a good place for them to stop.
Right. And so they go to Miss Sookie's, and they discover what it is, as you say, a house of ill repute, whorehouse, whatever you want to call it,
right,
brothel, whatever.
Which is amusing to me throughout that whole section that Mouse does not. She's 7.5 when the book starts, and she's lived a very sheltered life.
Right.
So by the time they get to Miss Sookie, she has no clue or an understanding of what this place is and what happens here. And I think they try to shield her from that. So that was a funny part. I enjoyed writing that.
Oh yeah, there are definitely a lot of pieces of that part of the book that are funny, in that she learns. Well, actually, I believe she starts her period while she's in this house, and
Mm-hmm.
so Miss Sookie and some of the other ladies kind of help her and nurture her through that process, and make her understand what that's all about, and help her and know how to take care of herself. Because mind you, she's living with her father; she's on the run, so to speak, with her dad, and he's not going to do these things. So it was definitely a blessing for her to be at that space, with Miss Sookie, and Mrs. Jameson as well was there, who worked there as a cook. They really took care of her and nurtured her. And then of course she began to develop relationships with some of the girls that were working there as well.
Yeah, it was oh my goodness, Hannah, or Mouse,
Right.
was the first character to come to me. When Miss Sookie came to me, I immediately knew what she did, like that she ran this whorehouse, and that she was going to be a very big part of Mouse's journey. But like the other girls were fun to kind of discover, and as I was writing, and definitely Sugar, and the way that Sugar then becomes such a big part of the story. So that whole section was probably my favorite to write, and Miss Sookie, outside of Mouse, is probably my favorite character.
And it is interesting, and I'm glad you said that, as you were writing, these characters came to you and you began to develop them and give them the substance and all of that, and I thought that was really good, because specifically in this part of the book, because it would have been easy to just make these girls just some wild girls who just landed in this house for some unknown reason. And the reality of it is that, I mean, even in modern times, when people end up doing certain things, there are reasons why this happens. There's things that have happened to them, earlier on in their lives, or experiences that they have had. With Sugar specifically, there was an experience that she had with somebody, messing with her.
Right.
It couldn't have been while she was still relatively young. And then she just, this was a life that she wound up living. So, I mean, there's truth to that in many cases. So, I like the fact that you gave them substance. They weren't just, random people.
Thank you.
And so in this part of the book, one of the things is funny, they're working, Ray is working in the house, and Mouse is living in the house. But one of the things that Miss Sookie talks about, and you mentioned it in your in the part that you read about the education. She was like, if she's going to live in this house, she's going to go to school. She's not going to be sitting up in here all day.
Watching what's going on in here.
Watching what's going on here. Even though this is what I do, I want to prepare this young lady to be able to do something different with her life. I also thought that was very powerful.
Miss Sookie was, even from the beginning, it's, with the other characters, she didn't know why. She just felt very protective of Mouse. And with her being, I believe when she arrives at Miss Sookie, she's around 9, somewhere between 9 and 10, maybe. That's a very delicate age for a girl child. And then you show up here, you don't have your mother. You're going to be living in this whorehouse, basically, with men coming in and out. So, Miss Sookie was very protective of Mouse throughout her stay there. And like you said, I think it was just important for her. She saw something in Mouse, and she understood, like the young folks say now, she understood the assignment. This child needs something else. And I'm really probably the only person who's going to be able to give it to her at this stage in her life. And so she took that on with no hesitation. And again, that's probably why she's one of my favorite characters in the book.
Absolutely. She did such a wonderful job in loving that young girl and doing all that she could to protect her. And then, of course, there were others. Of course, Sunny was another one that came in, and they hit it off immediately, and they developed this friendship and all of that. But then it was also interesting to see between the girls that worked at the house that there was jealousy, you know, in some ways, because I guess I don't know how much money they were getting, but it was like they began to be, sometimes possessive of the customers that were coming in. So I thought that was interesting. And even, oh, you go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, even the layers of the difficulty of Sugar getting jealous about a particular client who, you know what I'm saying, the whole, this was someone who had basically kind of put her in this position. And even still, there was a little bit of jealousy there when he decided to, start dealing with another girl in the house. So there were a lot of layers there. How Miss Sookie wanted them all to kind of be her girls and wanted them to get along like sisters. And she kind of nipped it in the bud when there was some drama over man. So that whole section was very important to Mouse's development. And even though she still didn't understand when they left that house what it was, she then later, kind of gets it. It's kind of funny when that happens as well.
Oh yeah, I know what she said. You must have been good at it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, which is one of the things I find really endearing about Mouse. She was funny without she wasn't trying to be funny.
Right. I mean, she's a child, and there she is, naive about life. She doesn't know things, and like children, she's just honest. She just says, which was also really something that her being the way that she was and being an honest child that she kept the secret for so long. Because you would have thought that she would have, something would have come up, that things would have happened a lot sooner than what they did, because she was that one. So I guess I understand why Ray was like, well, she started talking, it's time to move on. Because he knew his child, I guess, the depths of who his child was. So, of course, Ray is there at the house, and he is not supposed to be dealing with the women, but he makes a decision to deal with one of the women anyway, which is the catalyst for them moving on to the next place.
Right.
So I was like, wow. But in the back of my mind, I kind of figured something like that would happen, because here's this man who's been kind of on his own, and even though we knew that he would go out drinking and doing different things like that, he was probably, doing whatever, dipping and dabbling. Yeah, we just didn't see it, so it really wasn't surprising to me that wound up happening. But then, of course, that's one of the things that happened for the next move and the next section of the book.
That broke my heart, though. I hated that. But it was necessary, but that kind of hurt my feelings. So when I had to write that scene, I was like, oh man, I'm not ready for them to go, but they had to go. And I think it broke Miss Sookie's heart as well.
Yeah, well, and you saying that just makes me think that basically your characters and the story sounds like it kind of took on a life of its own for you.
It did, actually. There were several things that occurred in the book that I had not planned, and things that kind of took a different shape than what I had originally planned. So, like, she ends up with a little brother in the book. That was in my mind when I envisioned that she was going to have a little sister, and that was going to be a bit of a contentious relationship, and that's just not what happened. When it began to flow, a lot of things changed. And it's all a part of the process. And for me, part of my process is sitting down and before I begin writing, being asked to be used as a vessel. So it's not, me. While, I'm a part of the process.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's definitely other forces at work. And so that was a fun part of it, though, as well, just to kind of see at the end, I'm like, oh, this is how it changed from what I initially envisioned and planned. But the old saying goes, how God laughs at our plans. So
absolutely.
well, it changed. It definitely changed from what I had planned.
Right. And I actually, it was the very first book that we read as a book club. It was Terry McMillan's latest book, which is over a year old now. But I was listening to an interview when she was talking about her character development, and she was kind of saying that like she had ideas that she might put down an idea or a basic thing, but how those characters took on a life of their own. And as she was writing, they would start saying stuff. She was like, what? So I get it. It's almost like you just go to another place and you might go back and read it later and it's like, what? I wrote that?
Yes. That I would say after I read the proof copy or while I was reading the proof copy, I don't remember writing that, or it's just it's funny, and I'm glad that I read an article recently where other authors say that their characters like talk to them and hang out with them, because I was starting to feel like this is not normal. Like people are supposed to hang out with me and talk to me, but a lot of authors experience that, and so it is true what she said. It's just like they I would write something and it was almost like it would be this little whisper like, nope, that's not right, or and I'd have to go back and kind of rework something, or so it's an interesting experience and process.
Sounds like it. So I appreciate it because, I'm going to show the book again. I'm sorry for those who came in later. It's Looking for Hope. I'll throw the name up as well. I really suggest that you read it. I read it in a day. So, I mean, it's not a thin book, but I just enjoyed it so much. It was like I wanted to know what was going to happen. So, that makes me feel good. Yes, so people, please pick it up and read it. It's a good read. You'll learn some things. You'll be inspired by Mouse's story and her resilience, and and Looking for Hope, which has multiple meanings.
Yep.
So, because I don't think we mentioned, did we mention her mother's name is Hope? Yeah, we hadn't mentioned that. So yeah. It's that, but then it's other things as well. So, of course, they're in Edenville. Ray does his thing. Well, it's Sugar. He ends up, being with Sugar.
Right.
And Sugar, not Sugar. He Sugar.
That was a nod to one of my favorite authors. So,
that's true.
Sugar.
Yeah. Bernice McFadden.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they end up leaving and going to not too far away. This time they go to Hemmings, Michigan. So you mentioned there was a background for the other two cities. What was Hemmings?
Hemmings did not have a particular background. Okay. And actually, I think that may be the only place that is a real place in Michigan, a real town.
Okay. Because I lived in Michigan for many years, outside Detroit, but I don't know. I have to look it up, see where it is. So they end up in Hemmings, Michigan. And of course, now it's not just Mouse and Ray, it's also Sugar. And a pregnant Sugar, who is, quite, several years younger than Ray. But one of the things I was thinking, like when he wasn't real old, he was still probably in his 30s, I would think.
Yeah, he was in his 30s.
Yeah, because just based upon the age that he was when he got with Hope's mom, that he wasn't, an old man per se. Right. So, they go into Michigan, and once again, they're a family of three, about to be four, and, looking for a place to live. And, they meet some people in the town who also take them in again, which I thought was great. Miss Bernadette and her parents, Mr. Kenneth, Althea, her fiance, Jimmy. It's just a whole family kind of takes them in now versus these individuals. And that was just really good to see as well. Once again, now that family kind of adopted this, they adopted this new family in town and really took care of them and helped them out, helped them get situated and things like that, which I thought was powerful. It made me think of, like back in the day when people would move and go from one place to another, and you may not know certain things, and people would help you out. So that's kind of fit with the times, I thought.
Mm-hmm. That was very much attributed to the time they were in. We were much more about community back then. Unfortunately, we've kind of lost that. And I think that was a good way to demonstrate how it would have been easy during that time for them to kind of disappear and not be found back at home. Now there's no way for you to hide. You do something like that, you got social media and all these other, cell phones, other ways to track people. They didn't have that then. And so it would have been easy for them to kind of leave and take on these new identities and not be found. So that's probably another reason why this story had to be set in that time frame.
Yeah, that's true, because it makes sense. Because you're right. Those things that we can do now, the way that things would have played out now would be totally different. Yeah, totally different now. But I did think that was great, the way that they went there and, became a part of a community, and another aspect of the story that it made me mad, but I like that you included it. You probably know where I'm going.
I think so.
The Richardsons, the family that Sugar goes to work for, because back then, where were women going to get jobs? They went and they worked at someone's house, and that's basically what they did. And Mouse went with them, and there was a relationship formed with a young girl there in the house, Julia, I believe her name was, and how that all played out. Because, of course, of them being on the run and them probably being in primarily Black communities most of the time, this is the first experience that Mouse would have had dealing with a little white girl.
Right. And I struggled with how to whether or not it should have been resolved, their relationship should have resolved more than it did. I kind of consulted my mentor and my publisher once the book had reached the editing phase, and say, do you think I needed to give that some more? And everybody kind of said, no, that was enough, and that was what was needed. But their friendship, I almost hated to have their friendship play out the way that it did. But I thought that it was more realistic than trying to, tie it up with rainbows and ribbons. But it was kind of I also hope that I didn't kind of beat it to death, kind of when we had Miss Althea telling the story about her experience and that kind of thing. But I wanted that to be a part of the book, because that definitely would have been a part of her life during that time, with having a white friend that was close in age to her. So I think that she served her purpose.
And I mean, it's real, it's true, based upon that time, that, and be honest with you, some of that happened even later on,
Right.
And, I can think of, growing up in, the 70s, 70s, early 80s, and how, like, at a certain age, everybody kind of played together and went to each other's houses and everything was cool. But then once you started getting to a certain age, you could see people kind of separating into their own groups, So, I mean, and it wasn't even so much that there was anything that happened that caused that. I think it's just kind of a natural thing, that would happen. And, I remember someone has a good comment. They're thanking us for our conversation. Yes, Paula, please read the book. Paula is always listening. Thank you for being here, Paula. She definitely, yes. Please pick up a copy. You'll really love it. I know you will. But yeah, those things kind of happen. And, I remember my dad saying once it's like when kids start getting to the age where maybe they might think about liking each other, dating or whatever, when things start shifting is a lot of times when that happens. So, the fact that their friendship kind of fell apart wasn't really surprising.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, the elders in Mouse's life kind of telling her stories they were just telling her the truth.
Right.
Speaking their truth. So I didn't think that it was too much per se, but just, them speaking their truths and kind of preparing her for what might happen.
Exactly. And I think they also, again, that instinct to knowing this child, something has happened to this child, and wanting to protect her as much as they possibly could, even though they again didn't really know why her situation was the way that it was.
So yeah, that was really good to see. So we touched on it a little bit a few minutes ago about there being a child born. We already mentioned that Sugar was pregnant. So there is a child born that was a son. And that was very RJ. For Ray Jr. And that was just that was interesting just to see Ray.
Change back, kind of.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
A lot of layers to that, some of which I won't mention because of, we don't want to give too much away with the story. But, first of all, I think most men probably want a son, a junior. Yeah. And so to have come through what they had come through and then this baby to come and him to be so enthralled with the baby. But you would think, and probably a lot of kids would get jealous, but I think because of what Mouse had endured, she just wanted someone to love, and to feel like they were hers. She and Sugar had this weird relationship in the beginning, and she wasn't close to Ray. So while she could have easily been jealous of RJ, I think she saw it as an opportunity to have someone that was her own that she could love and would love her back. And so I think that's why she took to RJ the way that she did. But definitely Ray kind of made a turnaround and kind of went back to being this loving, doting father. So it was interesting.
It definitely was interesting. And also, one more comment.
I see the comment from Miss Laura.
Yes. Yes, please meet these characters. You will love them. You will love them because there's so many characters. And, we always do an overview. I don't like to enough to tease it, but not so much that you feel like it got spoiled for you. But yes, I just that was interesting to see, and also it gave, in my opinion, it gave him more humanity. Because it showed that he had the power to love and could love. I'm sure it was hard for Mouse because if it was me, if I was in Mouse's position, it would have been hard for me. At the same time, like wow, Right. And then she also became protective of Sugar, though.
Yep. I think I love the kind of the moment when when their relationship changes. And I'm trying to figure out a way to talk about it without giving away too much. I think Sugar understands that there's something difficult that has happened. And she softens a little bit to Mouse. And I think Mouse understands that Sugar is not much older than she is. Right. And there's a difficult reason that she's in the position that she's in. So they kind of figure out a way to exist. And then RJ really kind of brings them together. So I really enjoyed the transition that relationship took. So that was fun to write.
And RJ was the community baby. I mean, not that people didn't love Mouse, but RJ kind of brought this whole, people coming together. And once again, that whole thing of community. Oh, you got to go to work. Oh, you can't take that baby. We'll take, that sort of thing,
Right.
So that was good to see, that they came together. And as I said, there was this community, this family, everybody getting along and, loving on each other until, and we're not going to talk about until. We're not going to talk about that because that we're not going to talk about. But basically there is an incident that kind of shifts things again. There's another shift and, some things happen and next thing we see the characters is 25 years later.
Yeah. So we go to meeting Mouse as an adult and seeing how her life has changed, and then she's got to deal with the repercussions of this second event that kind of shifts things, like you put it. So it was interesting. I kind of struggled with whether or not to do that time warp, but I felt like we needed to transition to her being an adult. There wasn't much more that we needed to see her go through as a child or as a youth. Of course, there are things that, maybe like her first date or kiss or whatever. Mm-hmm. But she kind of references that right. as an adult when she's talking to Ray. So it was interesting to the majority of the book I had dealt with child Mouse.
Right.
So that was an interesting transition to try to see her and write her as an adult and how she would be as an adult. So that was a challenging part of the book, and trying to make sure that she still sounded like Mouse and right. still relatable. And so that was a challenging part, but a fun part to write, and especially with all the things that happened during that segment.
Mm-hmm. Right, because it was, for me, it was like, oh, wow, 25 years? Well, I kind of, like you said, I thought like, wow. But then it makes sense because it would have allowed the things that needed to happen in that time frame, with Ray. And then for her to be able to kind of not be in the thick of it, but be, separate from it and then, deal with the repercussions, deal with her own, mental health. Because, of course, there's mental health things that she had to deal with, and just coming to terms with certain things and, different forms of grief or whatever that she had to kind of work through those things and, and still be challenged by those things in some ways, and to me, that's real because I feel like whenever you've had a traumatic situation or multiple traumatic situations in your life, it is a process. Mm-hmm. You can go to therapy and you might, you'll be all right, but then there'll be something that'll trigger you. You know what I mean?
The work is never over, and that's the interesting thing just about life in general. Right. You will think, I was telling someone this recently, you think you've gotten to this place, and then, like you said, something will happen, and you're like, whoa, where'd that come from? Right. Okay, let me go back and do some more work. So it's, although I did not address that part of Mouse's journey, we definitely know that there would have had to be something that she experienced, therapy, whatever it was, whatever means she found to kind of deal with the trauma that she had experienced. She definitely had to have done some kind of work to get to where she was.
Because really, her experiences led to her life work. So yeah, there were definitely, some things in that, so which you have to read the book to find out.
Please read the book.
Please read the book to find out. But yes, but I mean, all those things are so real. And for me, that's what made the character relatable, because I mean, I think of, just things in my own life. I mean, quite honestly, even me doing this here right now is not a traumatic thing, but I knew when I was a little girl that I liked talking to people and I always loved to read. And, I went and did a whole bunch of other stuff and still doing some other things, but I found a way to come back to this. So, I mean, there is truth in the fact that there can be things that, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, seeds that are planted when you're young that can, carry out throughout the rest of your life journey. It's just a matter of what you choose to do with those seeds,
Absolutely.
So I appreciated that. And then, well, we're getting near the end. Plus, there's the things at the end of the book I'm not telling.
Miss Laura had a question.
All right, let me see here. Miss Laura. Okay, let's see here. She says, were you always clear what direction your characters would go, or did you try writing a certain direction and have to backtrack on some of the characters?
I definitely had my own ideas, and my characters definitely made some changes and steered me in other directions. As I mentioned to Marcy earlier in the conversation, part of my process is to sit and before I begin writing, to be asked to use as a vessel. And so definitely there were things that were in my mind that I wanted to do or say that didn't happen. But I turned it over, and I was definitely very pleased with the finished product. And so I'm grateful for that process and to be used kind of as a conduit for whatever story is supposed to come through me. And I hope that always remains a part of my process, because that made my writing easy. To be honest, before I found that as a process, I struggled a lot, and that's why it took me so long to write the book.
Right, because I don't think we said how long it took. I know you and I talked about it.
Right.
But we didn't tell them. Tell them how long it took you to write this book.
It took me a total of 14 years. And, I shared with Ms. Marcy that a large part of that was because I was doubtful and fearful. And once I got a couple of mentors and found my process, it took about 3 years from that point for me to get serious and buckle down and really get the book done.
So for all of you budding, yeah, she's like, wow. So for all of you budding writers out there, or budding whatever it is, the thing is not to give up, to hold on to it and not to give up, and find people who can encourage you or help you or, support you in whatever it is that that you're trying to do. She says, you gave me hope. Well, hey, hope. You found it. Now you got to read it.
Well, I'm glad. Glad.
Yes.
Don't stop.
That's just it. Don't give up. I know the last author that I interviewed, she kind of talked about that as well. Like, keep writing. If you want to write, just keep writing, keep doing it, and eventually with the right people and the right support systems and all of that, if it's in your heart, if it's in your spirit, God gave it to you, it will find its way out into the world.
It really will. It
will. Deandra, thank you for joining us. So thanks for sharing. I've been writing a book for over 3 years, so I'm glad to know that it's okay to take time on my craft. Absolutely. And we look forward to interviewing you one day, Ms. Johnson. I'm gonna write your name down. Be on the lookout. I'm gonna come stalking you. So I'm waiting. So yes, thank you so much for your time this evening. I know that you said that we know that you do some stories, you do some things on blogs and stuff like that. But what else are you working on? Any new books right now, or?
I am. I'm working on I've started the research phase for my second book.
Okay.
And I will just tell you that I am a certified scuba diver. And this character is going to be a Black female scuba diver. So very different from Looking for Hope. But so I'm excited. After I finished looking for hope, she started hanging out with me, and she's a little more bossy than Mouse.
That's good though. I love it. That is the kind of thing that made me even want to do a book club, because a lot of times, we have a certain lane that we stay in, even in the way that we read.
Right.
But with the book club, I've even been reading things that I normally wouldn't read. I have been, picking up on characters and being able to introduce authors and characters that are different from what we normally see. And that is just so powerful, because we're not all in one box,
Yeah.
We're not, Black people are not a monolith, we're
Yes.
not all the same. We have a lot of different interests. And just because you might want to scuba dive, that doesn't mean you're trying to be like somebody else. You're being you and scuba diving, all those sorts of things. So I love it. And yes.
So, well, then that means you have to have me back on the second.
Oh, I will. We have connected. And for those who may have missed it earlier, we actually met each other at here in Atlanta at Black Writers Weekend, which was back in June, which seems like June of last year, but was only a couple months ago.
Right.
But we met. So yeah, we're definitely, we're on each other's radar. So definitely keep me and keep us in the loop, because I would love to hear about a Black woman scuba diving.
Absolutely. Oh, I will definitely. I wish I could share with you what the story is about, but I can't share that just yet.
That's fine. I'm patient. We're patient.
I will definitely reconnect. We'll stay connected.
Yeah, we're going to stay connected anyway. But yes. All right. Well, that sounds good. Looking forward to that. So we have reached our time, and I don't believe in keeping people longer. Is there anything, however, that you would like to share with the audience before we go that you just, would like for them to know?
One thing I would like to share is when you all read a book, my book, any author's book, please make sure you go and do reviews. That is very helpful for authors, especially within Amazon and the way that Amazon works. So I've been trying to really ask that, for those of you who enjoy the book, even if you don't, I want honest feedback, because that will help shape me. And, as an author, this was my first book. So I know that I have a lot to learn and a long way to go. So I appreciate all of your feedback. So please go do your reviews if you read the book.
Right. And just so you all know, when you go look, her reviews are 5 stars. Just so you know that.
I'm very grateful.
So people, it is a good book. And as you were saying to me early in Mbinguni, that someone was like, I can't believe this is your first book.
Yeah.
So yes, it really is a good book, 5-star, and I'm sure you will agree. So thanks again, everyone, for your time, for being here with us either live this evening or catching it on the replay. Make sure you go out and grab a copy if you don't already have one. Looking for Hope. And all of the socials and everything have been scrolling at the bottom, so make sure you follow and like and share and let people know about this awesome book and this awesome author that we know we're going to hear a lot more from. So thanks to everyone. You have a good evening, good morning, good day, whatever time you're watching.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
No problem. We look for one last thing just for next week, because there is another book next week. I will be talking in this book. See what? This is a thick one. And I haven't started, so you know what I'm going to be doing? The Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois by Honore Jeffers. This is actually Oprah's book club pick as well. So even though I think I probably picked it before Oprah, but nevertheless, this has been in the works for several months. So yes, I'll be talking to Honore on, actually it'll be Thursday of next week. We normally meet the first Monday of the month, but it will be Thursday based upon next week is Labor Day. So I will be laboring and reading this book. So I look forward to seeing everyone next week or whenever you're able to join in again. And you all have a great evening, have a great holiday weekend, and we'll talk again soon. You stay there for me. Don't leave yet.
Okay.
All right. Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Y'all have a good one. All righty. Bye-bye.